Welcome to our UPS 7 Zambia presents important questions to be answered. At what time are the 144,000 be sealed? Is there a gap of time between the sealing and the slaughter of Ezekiel 9 as suggested by 11 symbolic code number 7 page 8? Is there evidence that Jacob's time of trouble occurs before Ezekiel 9 as many Davidians insist? How does the solemn assembly fit into this picture? Prayer thoughts. We are reading from Class Object Lesson, page 412, paragraph 1. It says, "It is in a crisis that character is revealed when the earnest voice proclaimed at midnight, 'Behold, the bridegroom cometh. Go ye out to meet him.' And the sleeping virgins were aroused from their slumber. It was seen who had made preparation for the event. Both parties were taken unawares. But one was prepared for the emergency, and the other was found without preparation. So now a sudden and unlooked for calamity, something that brings the soul face to face with the death, will show whether there is any real faith in the promises of God. It will show whether the soul is sustained by grace. The great final test comes at the close of human probation, when it will be too late for the soul's need to be supplied. So, brothers and sisters, we see that inspiration tells us to say we are in a crisis, that character is revealed. Okay, and we see that we are given the 10 virgins. We see that 5 were wise and 5 were foolish. And inspiration tells us to say both parties were taken unawareness. But one was what? Was prepared for the emergency, and the other was found without preparation. So now a sudden and looked for calamity, something that brings the soul face to face with death, will show whether there is any real faith in the promises of God. So we see that, brothers, we are living in a time where we have 2 classes of the people in the church. Even today, among the present truth believers, the people who accept the teachings of men and the people who do not accept the teachings of men. The people who follows the original writings of the shepherds and the spirit of prophets and the Bible, and the people who follows their carnal and fables theories that suggests that the Jacob's time of trouble takes place before the slaughter of Ezekiel 9. So we shall ponder on this subject and see, is Jacob's time of trouble taking place before the slaughter of Ezekiel 9? We need to show our faith and believe in the promises of God. Meditate on this prayer thought, brothers and sisters. So we continue. The 144,000 were present during Jacob's time of trouble. We read from Shepherd Road, Volume 2, page 163, paragraph 2. It says, "We quote from the writings of the spirit of prophets. This was the time of Jacob's trouble. Then all the saints cried out with anguish of spirits and were delivered by the voice of God. The 144,000 triumphants, their faces were lightened up with the glory of God." Life Sketches, page 117. Inspiration says, note that the 144,000 in number were present in the time of Jacob's trouble. According to the following quotation, that time of trouble commences immediately after the close of probation, when Christ shall cease his work as a meditator in man's behalf. Then this time of trouble will begin. Patriarchs and Prophets, page 201. That time of trouble is before any of the sleeping saints are resurrected. Therefore, the 144,000 are not resurrected, but are living saints who have never tasted death and are to be translated at the second coming of Christ. So, brothers and sisters, we see that here inspiration tells us to say the 144,000 were present during Jacob's time of trouble. So if someone comes and say Jacob's time of trouble is taking place before the slaughter of Ezekiel 9, then is contradicting what the inspiration is telling us here. Because the inspiration is telling us the 144,000, it even says not that the 144,000 in number were present in the time of Jacob's trouble. Brothers and sisters, we need to study the Bible and inspiration for ourselves, that we may ponder and understand on these things. Let not, the Bible says in Isaiah chapter 2, verse 22, it says, "Cease ye from man whose breath is in his nostrils, where shall we be accountable of?" Let us cease trusting in a man, but let us believe in the Bible and the testimony and the shepherd's rod. In that way we shall be sanctified. We are sealed before Jacob's time of trouble. Let's read Daystar March 14. It was written in 1846. This is paragraph 2. It says, "About 4 months since, I had a vision of events all in the future, and I saw the time of trouble, such as never was. Jesus told me it was the time of Jacob's trouble, and that we should be delivered out of it by the voice of God. Just before we entered it, we all received the seal of the living God. Then I saw the 4 angels seized to hold the 4 winds, and I saw famine, pestilence, and swords. Nations rose against nation, and the whole world was in confusion. Then we cried to God for deliverance day and night, till we began to hear the bells on Jesus' garments. And I saw Jesus rise up in the forest, and as he came out, we heard the tinkling of the bells, and knew our high priest was coming out. Then we heard the voice of God, which shook the heavens and the earth, and gave the 144,000 the day and hour of Jesus' coming." So, brothers and sisters, here we see that the spirit of prophecy, we see that Sister White says about 4 months since she had a vision of the events which are supposed to take place in the future. And she explained to say she saw the time of trouble, such was never was. And we see that Jesus told her that it was the time of Jacob's trouble. And we see that the spirit of prophet says, just before we entered it, we all received the seal of the living God. So, brothers and sisters, if someone comes and says Jacob's time of trouble is taking time before the slaughter of Ezekiel 9, then he's contradicting what the inspiration says here. It says, before we entered the Jacob's time of trouble, we all received the seal of the living God. Now, if Jacob's time of trouble is taking place before the slaughter of Ezekiel 9, brothers and sisters, such teachings, we need to stay away from them. Let us focus and follow what inspiration is telling us. In that way, we shall not be misled. Inspiration is very clear here to say, just before we enter the time of Jacob's trouble, we received the seal of the living God. Then I saw the 4 angels seized to hold the 4 winds. Brothers and sisters, we need to study the word of God and the inspiration, that man should not deceive us. Take heed, brothers and sisters. We read from Review and Heralds, May 27. It was written in 1862. You can also read from Testimony for the Church, volume 1, page 353. It says, as the members of the Board of Christ approach the period of their last conflict, the time of Jacob's trouble, they will grow up into Christ and will partake largely of his spirit. As the third message swears to a loud cry, and as great power and glory attend the closing work, the faithful people of God will partake of that glory. It is the latter rain which revives and strengthens them to pass through the time of trouble. Their faces will shine with the glory of that light which attained the third angels. Take it, brothers and sisters. We read two crosses, brothers and sisters. We read from Signs of the Time, November 27, 1879, paragraph 1. It says, Jacob and Esau represent two crosses. Jacob the righteous and Esau the wicked. Jacob's nights of wrestling and anguish represent the time of trouble through which the people of God must pass, just prior to the second coming of Christ. Jeremiah refers to this time. Wherefore do I see every man with his hands on his loins, as a woman in travail, and all faces are turned into paleness. Alas, for that day is great, so that none is like it. It is even the time of Jacob's trouble, but ye shall be saved out of it. Daniel, in prophetic vision, looking down to this point, says, And at that time shall Michael stand up, the great prince, which standeth for the children of thy people. And there shall be a time of trouble, such as never was since there was a nation, even to that same time, and at the same time thy people shall be delivered, everyone that shall be found written in the book. Isaiah speaks of the same time. Come, my people, enter thou into the chambers, and shut thy door about thee, hid thyself for a little moment, until the indignation be overpast. For behold, the Lord cometh out of his place to punish the inhabitant of the earth for their iniquities. The earth also shall disclose her blood and shall no more cover her slain. So we see, brothers and sisters, that here are brought two classes. Jacob represent the righteous and Esau represent the wicked people. And we see that the wrestling of Jacob and so we see that these two classes, these two people, Jacob and Esau, represent two classes of people. Jacob represents the righteous and Esau represents the wicked. So we see that Jacob wrestled with the angels the whole night, represent the time of trouble through which the people of God must pass just prior to the second coming of Christ. Take heed, brothers and sisters, we read from the Review and Herald, August 12, 1884, paragraph 10 and 11, it says, Let none be discouraged in view of the severe trials to be met in the time of Jacob's trouble, which is yet before them. They are to work earnestly, anxiously, not for that time, but for today. What we want is to have a knowledge of the truth as it is in Christ now, and a personal experience now. In these precious closing hours of probation, we have a deep and living experience to gain. We shall thus form characters that will ensure our deliverance in the time of trouble. The time of trouble is the crucible that is to bring out Christ-like characters. It is designed to lead the people of God to renounce Satan and his temptations. The last conflict will reveal Satan to them in his true character, that of a cruel tyrant, and it will do for them what nothing else could do: uproot him entirely from their affections. For to love and cherish sin is to love and cherish its author, that deadly foe of Christ. When they excuse sin and cling to perseverance of character, they give Satan a place in their affections and pay him homage. So solemn word of inspiration, brothers and sisters. We see that here inspiration tells us to say, none should be discouraged in review of the severe trials we are to meet in the time of trouble or Jacob's trouble. No one should receive discouragement, brothers and sisters. What we need now is to work earnestly, anxiously, not for that time, but for today. We have to work for the truth for today. Are we living in harmony with the truth that God has given us? Are we living according to the present truth, brothers and sisters? Before Jacob's time of trouble. Because Jacob's time of trouble, as we have read, it is coming after the sending of the servant of God. After the church is being purified, that's when we see Jacob's time of trouble coming. Are we working for the purification of the church? Are we striving and living according to the present truth that we may receive the seal of the living God in our foreheads? Brothers and sisters, we must work for today. We must work earnestly, anxiously to receive the seal of the living God. Then we have no fear. We have no discouragement about Jacob's time of trouble. We see that inspiration says the time of trouble is the crucible that is to bring out Christ's character. It must bring Christ's character. How shall it bring Christ's character when we are not living according to the present truth? When we are not adhering to the truth? Brothers and sisters, for to love and cherish sin is to love and cherish its author. That deadly foe of Christ, when they excuse sin and cling to perversity of character, they give Satan a place in their affections and pay him homage. May God forbid this. Let us strive with all the power that God has given us to be among the 144,000. Jacob represents the righteous, while Esau the wicked. Brothers and sisters, as we have read, we read from the Spirit of Prophecy, volume 1, page 121. It says, Jacob and Esau represent two classes, Jacob the righteous and Esau the wicked. Jacob distressed when he learned that Esau was marching against him with 400 men, represent the trouble of righteous as the decree goes forth to put them to death. Just before the coming of the Lord, as the wicked gather about them, they will be filled with anguish, for like Jacob, they can see no escape for their lives. The angel placed himself before Jacob, and he took hold of the angel and held him, and wrestled with him all night. So also will the righteous in their time of trouble and anguish wrestle in prayer with God, as Jacob wrestled with the angel. Jacob in his distress prayed all night for deliverance from the hand of Esau. The righteous in their mental anguish will cry to God day and night for deliverance from the hand of the wicked, from where apostates, Protestants, who surround them. So, brothers and sisters, we see that inspiration here encourages us, brothers and sisters, we must wrestle with God in prayer as Jacob wrestled with the angel the whole night. Here the righteous will wrestle with God in prayer for deliverance from the wicked people. Jacob wrestled with the angel. So we see from the illustration of the picture that Jacob is wrestling with the angel. So we say, brothers and sisters, from Great Controversy, page 616, it says, paragraph 2. Jacob's night of anguish when he wrestled in prayer for deliverance from the hand of Esau, Genesis chapter 32, verse 24 to 30, represent the experience of God's people in the time of trouble because of the deception practiced to secure his father's blessing. Intended for Esau, Jacob had fled for his life, alarmed by his brother's deadly threats. After remaining for many years an exile, he had set out at God's command to return with his wives and children, his flocks and herds, to his native country. On reaching the borders of the land, he was filled with terror by the tidings of Esau's approach at the head of a band of warriors. Doubtless bent upon revenge, Jacob's company, unarmed and defenseless, seemed about to fall helpless, victims of violence and slaughter. And to the burden of anxiety and fear was added the crushing weight of self-reproach. For it was his own sin that had brought this danger. His only hope was in the mercy of God. His only defense must be prayer, yet he leaves nothing undone on his own parts to atone for the wrong to his brother and to avert the threatened danger. So should the followers of Christ, as they approach the time of trouble, make every aversion to the prejudice and to avert the danger which threatens liberty of. So we see, brothers and sisters, say, so should the followers of Christ, as they approach the time of trouble, make every exertion to place themselves in a proper light before the people, to disarm prejudice and to avert the danger which threatens the liberty of conscience. So, brothers and sisters, we see as it happened to Jacob when he was returning to his father's land, as God commanded him to return. We see that Jacob obtained blessings through stealing. He stole the blessings of his brother and he secured them to himself. So we see that Jacob was now, after the exile, serving in his uncle's Laban. He was told to return with his wives and his children. But on his way, we see that Jacob, he saw that Esau was very upset, of which he looked at the arm he had and they were helpless, doubtless, that they cannot defeat the Esau. But we see that Jacob did not leave anything undone. He did every sacrifice. He prayed everything to God that he should overcome. So we see that he leaves nothing undone on his own part to atone for wrong to his brother and to avert the threatened danger. He didn't leave anything undone. He did everything what was required. So inspiration says, should the followers of Christ, as they approach the time of trouble, make every aversion to place themselves in a proper light. So because of the deception practiced to secure his father's blessing intended for Esau, Jacob had fled for his life, alarmed by his brother's deadly threats. After remaining for many years in exile, he had set out at God's command to return with his wives and children and his flocks and herds to his native country. So this is what happened to Jacob. So the great tribulation, we read from Shepherd Volume 2, page 165, says, one of the elders before the throne said of them, these are they which came out of great tribulation, the time of Jacob's trouble. Revelation 7, verse 14. We see in Great Controversy, page 648, paragraph 3, you can also read from Answer Book 2, page 90. It says, the Great Tribulation is identified in the passage as the time of Jacob's trouble. But elsewhere, inspiration also calls the time of trouble such as never was since there was a nation. They sang a new song before the throne, a song which no man can learn, save the 144,000. It is the song of Moses and the Lamb, a song of deliverance. None but the 144,000 can learn that song, for it is the song of their experience, an experience such as no other company have ever had. These are they which follow the Lamb wheresoever he goeth. These, having been translated from the earth, from among the living, are counted as the first fruits unto God and to the Lamb. Revelation 15, verse 2 and 3. Revelation 14, verse 1 to 5. These are they which came out of great tribulation. They have passed through the time of trouble, such as never was since there was a nation. They have endured the anguish of the time of Jacob's trouble. They have stood without an intercessor through the final outpouring of God's judgment. So we see that the 144,000 before Jacob's time of trouble, they have already sealed, and they are in number. They will go these tribulations of Jacob's time of trouble. Question, brothers and sisters, we read from Answer Book 2, page 90. It says, if the angel who seals the first fruits, the 144,000, goes right on with the sealing of the second fruits, the great multitude, Revelation 7, verse 9, will the four angels be warding the four winds? Revelation chapter 7, verse 1. throughout the seeding of the both fruits? Answer, as Revelation 7 verse 14 says, that the great multitude, the second fruits, came out of the great tribulation. It is conclusive that the four winds will be held as the angel command, till we have sealed the servant of our God. Revelation 7 verse 3. The winds therefore are loose and blowing after the 144,000 are sealed. And while the great multitude is being gathered and sealed, thus only can it be said that the multitude came out of great tribulation, out of a time of trouble, such as never was since there was a nation, even to that same time. Daniel 12 verses 1. So we see that the 144,000 are sealed before the four winds are loosed, before the mark of the beasts, before the Jacob's time of trouble. The 144,000 are sealed. Okay, and the great multitude are sealed when the winds are loosed. That's when we can call that they came out of the great tribulation, because they are gathered during the time of trouble, which has since never was before the nation. Jacob's time of trouble. We read from Answer Book 2, page 20. It says, as a flaming torch in the blackness of night, stand forth the truth that the time of trouble such as never was, find the church free from the flood of tears, free from the bad fish, and consequently able not only to withstand the devil, but also to go forth conquering and to conquer in the mighty power of Michael, whose standing up delivers everyone, that shall be found written in the book. Daniel 12 verse 1. We read in Jeremiah chapter 30 verse 7 says, alas, for that day is great, so that none is like it. It is even the time of Jacob's trouble, but ye shall be saved out of it. The people that have come to this antitypical time of trouble are returning to the homeland, are comforted. Apparently it is bad enough to frighten all, but God's encouraging counsel is fear not. Cultivating the faith, brothers and sisters. We read from Timely Greetings, volume 1, number 47, page 14 says, plainly the burden of this chapter is concerning the antitypical returning to the homeland. Though terrible the trouble may seem, yet the outcome of it to be the same as in the type. Right now, we may not appreciate this study as we ought to, but the time is soon coming in which we will dig as faster as harder for it as we would do get out from under an average. Those who have but little faith in the word of God, though the study will not do them much good. Now is the time to start cultivating the faith we need to have from them. It is the time we need, brothers and sisters, to cultivate the faith we need. Take it, brothers and sisters, track number 1, page 39, paragraph 2 says, following the completion of the slaughter and just preceding the scattering of the coals of fire over the seat, the cherubim stood on the right side of the house, and the crowd filled the inner court. Ezekiel 10, verse 2 and 3. Later they lifted up their wings and mounted up from the earth in my sight, says the prophet. Ezekiel 10, verse 19. Then subsequently he saw them again lift up their wings. Ezekiel 11, verse 22 and 23. Showing that though they had departed after the separation took place, Ezekiel 10, verse 3 and 19, they had later returned and were now departing for the second time. So the order of event, brothers and sisters, we read from Timely Greetings, volume 2, number 10, page 29. It says, point 4, it says, that the destruction of the tares from among the first fruits of the living, quoting Matthew 13, verse 30 and 48, 49, Ezekiel 9, verse 6 and 7, result the purification of the church. So the first thing to happen, it is the purification of the church before Jacob's time of trouble takes place. Second point, it says that immediately thereafter, angel let loose the four winds, Revelation 7, verse 1 to 4, whereupon ensues the time of trouble, and Michael standing up to deliver from it, all whose names are written in the Lamb's book of life. Daniel 12 verse 1. So after the purification of the church, that's when we see Jacob, the time of trouble begins. Point number 6, it says that the angels letting loose the four winds to blow over the four corners of the earth, Revelation 7 verse 1, does not anticipate a world war, but rather a worldwide degree enforced throughout Babylon by the image beast, and that then no one may buy or sell save he who worship the image. Revelation 13 verse 15 to 17. This is Simon Greetings, Volume 2, number 10, page 29, paragraph 6, once more again. So we see that the first thing is the church to be purified. Then we see the angel let loose the four winds, then to blow upon the earth. This will bring the trouble, and it will bring the decree that whosoever has no mark of the beast should not buy or sell, save he that worship the image of the beast. Continuing on point 7 says that subsequently the time of Jacob's trouble, Jeremiah 30 verse 7, for the 144,000, the sons of Jacob logically develop on their way home. Genesis 32 verse 1 and verse 24, to the land of their fathers, Ezekiel 36 verse 28 and Ezekiel 37 verse 21 and 25. So we see, brothers and sisters, that the shepherds would put it in clear that this Jacob is a time of trouble will develop on their way home, and it will take place after the purification of the church, even after the mark of the beasts. Continuing point 8, it says that the foregoing epical event shall cause the 144,000 to have their name changed as did their father Jacob, and as a body receive a new name which the mouth of the Lord shall name. Last point, we see that this event shall on time ultimate in the setting up of the kingdom, Daniel 2 verse 44 and Isaiah 2 verse 1 to 4, Micah 4 and Ezekiel 37, wherein the 144,000, those who follow the Lamb, whosoever he goeth, shall stand with him on Mount Zion, and there receive force of the Gentiles. With this sequence of events will issue the loud cry of the angel that lightened the earth with his glory. Revelation 18 verse 1, as that other voice cried, come out of her, my people, that ye may not be partakers of our sins, and that ye receive not of her plagues. Summary of the study, brothers and sisters, as it commences immediately after. We see the Jacob's time of trouble commences immediately after the close of probation, when the 144,000 are returning to the homeland, the kingdom. That before they, the 144,000, enter it, they have received the seal of the living God. It occurs as the message of the third angel swears into a loud cry. It comes to pass just prior to the second coming of Christ. It was seen and typically as the same event by Jeremiah, Daniel, and Isaiah. It involves a death decree that goes forth against the righteous, the 144,000. It reveals that the true character of the 144,000 in the midst of crisis. It is also known as the Great Tribulation, or the time of trouble, such as never there was since there was a nation, Daniel 12 verse 1. As it involves the blowing of the four winds mentioned in Revelation 7, the image of the beast. It finds the church purified, free from tears. The slaughter of Ezekiel 9 just precedes the scattering of the cause, the outpouring of the holy spirits.